welcome back to Big Mike Sports, Atlanta-born, Carolina-raised, Detroit-driven. I'm your host, as always, Big Mike.
The one and only.
The man himself. And we're going to get into the Lions' win over the Raiders at home on Monday Night Football, along with a little Atlanta Hawks check-in just a second. But first, here are today's headlines. The Bears' track record of hiring only the best people continued today as their running back coach was fired for inappropriate workplace conduct after numerous HR complaints. We've all been there before. The running back coach expects to be traded to the Browns and awarded a $230 million guaranteed contract. And when asked about the Bears' culture in the face of two coaches' dismissals, head coach Matt Eberflus said, "The culture is actually pretty damn good." Raiders cleaned house following that loss to the Lions, firing head coach Josh McDaniels, their offensive coordinator, and general manager, along with benching Jimmy G, the longtime embattled quarterback. When asked for comment, owner Mark Davis stated, "Do I really look like a guy with a plan?" Jimmy G reportedly using his free brothel voucher and was spotted at a Vegas 7-Eleven buying Prosecco and a series of herbal supplements. Falcons benched starting quarterback Desmond Ridder as well at halftime of their previous game, putting him through concussion protocol just for fun. He was cleared of a concussion. It seemed like it was just something they wanted to do to kind of cover up the fact that they were benching him just for being bad. Arthur Smith stated he looked awful concussed before realizing that is just his quarterback's play style. Considering this is a man who started Marcus Mariota to begin last season, Arthur Smith himself has now entered concussion protocol. And last but not least, or perhaps it is least, James Harden finally forced himself out of Philly to once again join his friend and former teammate Russell Westbrook, along with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Harden summoning his inner high school freshman to declare, "No, this time it'll work." Sources expect Harden to want out once again by the trade deadline, where he will be traded to the Thunder for a second-round pick swap and then waived. And those were today's burning sports headlines.
That's terrible.
And now to get back into our coverage of America's team, the Detroit Lions, in their 26-14 victory over the Las Vegas Raiders at home on Monday Night Football. Now, this was a game that should not have been as close as it was. As you can see with some of the stats, the Lions absolutely dominated this game. There was a few different weird miscues that happened along the way, namely Jared Goff's pick six on a weird throw in the vicinity of Amon-Ra St. Brown. It looked like he was just trying to throw the ball away. It could have also been a little miscommunication on the route by the quarterback and the receiver, but anyway, one of those things that happens sometimes. Jared Goof comes out once again. He can have some gaffes like that every once in a while, but yeah, if you're going to throw that ball away, just put some air under it. I call this one the reverse Russell Wilson, because there was a time when Wilson was on the Seahawks, and it looked like he was just throwing the ball away, but it would always somehow find Lockett in the corner of the end zone somehow. So yeah, this one went for a touchdown just so the other team, adding on to their only offensive touchdown. And at that point, it made it a 16-14 game. Then the Lions were able to hang on to the ball for basically the rest of the game, it seemed like. I mean, if you look at that time of possession, the Lions had the ball for 2/3 of the game, and that was because they established the run early and often with both running backs Jahmyr Gibbs and Craig Reynolds. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs took the most of the credit for the huge Lions rushing game, coming out with a huge rushing day, tacking on a rushing touchdown as well to go along with a few receptions, going for 29.9 fantasy points. It is officially Gibbs season in fantasy football. If you drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, which I said you probably shouldn't have, but if you did and you've waited this long and held on to this long, congratulations. If you traded him away, I hope you got something good, because somebody who bought low on Jahmyr Gibbs, i.e. me, is feeling pretty good right now as well. I think I traded Breece Hall and Cortland Sutton for Gibbs and another player, something like that. So yeah, it's officially Gibbs season. Gibbs should be a huge running back one the rest of the season, even with Montgomery coming back into the fold at some point. It's going to be a thunder lightning thing. Now with Gibbs fully realized, he'll still be really effective, because once Montgomery comes out, you think if Montgomery's on the field, they'll run the ball. But when Gibbs comes on the field, the other team might be expecting pass, so then you could gash them with the run with Gibbs, who is totally explosive. On that touchdown run he slipped through like the tiniest hole imaginable, and then suddenly he was just gone. Gibbs is a super electric player who can do things like that, and he's proved also that he can carry the workload. I mean, running the ball 26 times, 31 touches in the whole game. I'm pretty sure he ran the ball at least 6 times on that first Lions drive, so they made sure to establish the run early and stuck to it the whole game, and it was effective, as we could see there. The Raiders got Jacobs going a little bit early on in the game. Their first drive or two, not a whole lot was really happening. Then that one Raiders touchdown drive on offense, it was all Jacobs. He wasn't able to do it for the whole game, but, he ended up with a pretty decent stat line at the end of the day. Also, your Raiders' leading receiver with 2 receptions and 27 yards was Josh Jacobs. So a pretty decent fantasy day there. If you're playing PPR, that's, like 16 points? Not too shabby. Definitely the best thing that happened with Raiders offense all day, because Jimmy G cannot hit the bright side of a barn. He went 10 of 21, 126 yards, sacked 6 times for 49 yards, and 1 interception thrown to Kirby Joseph in the end zone into double coverage. Just a pretty bad throw in all regards, really. I don't think he really saw the safety or expected the safety to be able to make a play on the ball there. But yeah, QBR of 3.7, and they, with those sack yards, they netted 77 yards passing the entire game. That stat line, honestly, I don't know if it reflects exactly how bad he looked, because he was missing wide open Devontae Adams a couple times, and that's what held Devontae Adams to just 1 reception for 11 yards on 7 targets. To put that into perspective for you, Amir Abdullah, the former Lions second-round pick at running back, and now basically mostly a kick returner at this point, had 1 catch for 12 yards. So Amir Abdullah outgained star receiver Devontae Adams, one of the best receivers in the game. And yet the Raiders did not end up trading him. He will stay put, and now he's going to have Aiden O'Connell throwing him the football, with the benching of Jimmy G and the firing of everybody. Interesting now because Antonio Pierce, the former linebacker, who had a pretty solid career with the Steelers, and I think some other teams as well, won a Super Bowl with the Steelers, I'm pretty sure. He'll take over as the interim coach. And, if you're the Raiders, you probably want to lose every game moving forward to kind of put you at least with a shot for a top 3 pick, because you know that the Cardinals are going to maybe win 3 or 4 games. So 3 is probably the magic number for wins, and the Raiders already have that. But when you have a former player like Antonio Pierce as your interim head coach, he's probably going to get the guys going. So I'd look to see maybe the Raiders get some surprise victories down the road. They are pretty good at home, 2-1 at home versus 1-4 away. So maybe another home victory or 2. You'll just have to see there. I don't think they'll be quite bad enough to get one of those really, really high picks to get Caleb Williams, who I think might end up staying in college. I don't think he's going to want to go to any of these top 5 teams. Or Drake May, or perhaps J.J. McCarthy. There's always some surprise quarterbacks that go early. I think a Christian Ponder in one draft, E.J. Manuel, those types of quarterbacks, they always find a way to sneak in there. Of course, nowadays the market has kind of corrected itself a little bit, but maybe it'll go back to how it was before, because we saw Will Levis have a really dominant debut performance for the Titans, and he fell down to whatever round it was, either the 2nd or 3rd, after there was some talk about him potentially going 5th overall. So you never know. The Raiders definitely going to go after a quarterback unless Aiden O'Connell becomes the next Kirk Cousins or something like that, which is possible. Aiden O'Connell's a pretty decent quarterback. He looked all right in some of the action that he's been in so far. But yeah, not a good look for the Raiders. The Lions kind of played down to them a little bit early on with all those field goals that they had to settle for. Riley Patterson going 4 of 5 on field goals. He did miss this 126-yard chip shot, but when you're using him as much as they were, his 5th attempt, he just pushed it a little bit. It's going to happen if you have your kicker go for like 5 or 6 attempts in a game. And that's another issue that the Lions had in this game, besides the fluky turnovers, like that Craig Reynolds quote-unquote fumble in the end zone, where Max Crosby basically goaded the refs into calling it a fumble on the field, and it was impossible to overturn. As soon as I saw Craig Reynolds go into that pile, I was like, you should have gone outside, man. That pile was bad news all the way through. But yeah, so the red zone, Ben Johnson getting a little too cute with his play call. There's this one really bizarre kind of delayed handoff play that was kind of weird that ended up with a loss. Then there was also a throwback to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I believe that the play design was for St. Brown to then throw the ball into the end zone. And he had some guys open in the end zone, but he just didn't pull the trigger.
It seems to me like you're an
And
expert.
he ended up taking a sack, which was actually credited as a sack in the box score, the only sack that the Lions took. So yeah, if you're in the red zone and you're Ben Johnson, you don't need to get cute like this. You're playing against the Raiders. You just got to do whatever gets the job done. So hopefully they will learn from that one a little bit and just, do what they have to do in the red zone instead of trying to get style points like they did. Ben Johnson does like to get kind of cute at other points in the season too. This isn't the first time that it's happened. But, we get that you're a smart guy. You got creative play designs, but you just got to do what you got to do at some point. A lot of the times, the smartest thing to do is just the simplest thing to do instead of making it overly complicated. So, yeah, there were some good signs from the Lions here, obviously with Gibbs continuing his run of dominance. Oh, yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown with his third straight game with 100 yards receiving, the first line to do that since Golden Tate in 2014, almost a whole decade ago, which is pretty ridiculous. But, Amon-Ra St. Brown reminds me a lot of Golden Tate in both the toughness, the kind of shiftiness out of the slot, and his kind of general build, too. I think that Golden Tate was a little bit shorter than Amon-Ra St. Brown, but yeah, very, very similar players. And Golden Tate was wearing the 15 and Amon-Ra St. Brown wearing the 14. So interesting little parallels there. And then at the trade deadline, the Lions did trade for Donovan Peoples-Jones from the Cleveland Browns. Not the flashiest move, but Peoples-Jones is definitely a Lions guy. Went to Michigan, grew up in Michigan, grew up a Lions fan. So yeah, definitely a Lions type guy. If Max Crosby didn't take his overlook by the previous Lions regime and not drafting him as a slight and used it as a chip on his shoulder, perhaps the Lions could have gone and went with him too, but that probably would have taken like 2 first-round picks or something crazy like that. But yeah, basically a shame that Max Crosby has never been able to find his way onto the Lions. Perhaps maybe later in his career, he could become like a Kyle Vanden Bosch type pickup in free agency or something like that. Just a thought, just a dream. But Sam Laporta also continuing to do very well. 8 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Lions rookies just looked really good in this game. And also on defense, Alex Anzalone with 7 total tackles, 2 sacks, and 3 tackles for loss. He's really coming into his own. And Lee McNeil, 4 tackles, 2 of them being sacks. And then Julian Okwara getting up there on the board with a sack of his own. And then Tracy Walker had some pretty big hits and tacked on a sack as well. He's continuing to play very well. Then Brian Branch in his first game back. Nothing too flashy from him, but he did get 6 tackles as he continues to get back into form. Look for him to make some pretty big plays down the stretch for the Lions. They have one of the easiest remaining strengths of schedule, and there's a good path for them to go 13-4 and potentially play for the 1 seed. But I still think that the Eagles will end up with the 1 seed, Detroit being a very close 2 seed. I did a little playoff predictor with them, and I had them losing to the Cowboys, and then another loss either at the Chargers or potentially like at the Saints, kind of one of those fluky losses that do happen sometimes. So yeah, I think that this is going to be a 13-4 Lions squad, and then if the Seahawks end up winning the NFC West, there's a pretty solid path for the Lions to make a run to the Super Bowl, because they could, as the 2nd seed, have a home playoff game against the NFC South winner, who I have as being the 7th seed. And then after that, you could potentially have a home game against the 49ers in the 2nd round if the Seahawks do end up winning that division. And then in the NFC Championship, you could end up playing the Cowboys or the Eagles or the Seahawks. Not a bad path, honestly, for the Lions to potentially make the Super Bowl if they do end up, the playoffs do end up kind of going down in that way. So still a very exciting season for the Lions. You hope that because like this game against the Raiders should have been a blowout. Like this should have been 40-14 easily. But they do have the bye week that they're going into, and so hopefully they'll be able to get a lot stronger, get a lot healthier as well, and then come out of the bye week swinging similar. So yeah, good things that we saw from the Lions in this game. Not the best, still some things to work out. But going into the bye, they should be able to iron that stuff out and go on a run potentially to the Super Bowl.
Perhaps.
And hey, how about we sneak in a little Hawks talk to finish out this episode today? The Hawks looks like it's going to be one of those seasons where they lose to some bad teams, but then somehow beat some good teams. Dropped their first two games of the season. One, pretty bad fashion against the Hornets. Trae Young looked pretty bad until the very end, and at that point it was too late. Bad. Well, I don't know if it's such a bad loss to the Knicks. But yeah, not exactly what you want to see at home. And then they win at the Bucks, and then a huge home victory against the Timberwolves, where DeJounte Murray goes for 40 points on 17 of 24 shooting. Yeah, that dude's a good player. I've always loved DeJounte Murray and really liked when the Hawks traded for him. Big fan of his. Trae Young still not in his full form yet. Hopefully, this slow starts that he's been, going on to start the years recently will kind of go away and he'll be able to get back into his full form. Because definitely expect better than 33% shooting from the 3-point line this season. But he's still dishing out a lot of assists as he usually does. So hopefully he'll be able to get the shooting and all that stuff back together because everybody else is doing pretty well. Jalen Johnson doing really well in the extended minutes that he's been getting this season. Really good waiver wire pickup in fantasy basketball if you're able to grab him. And DeJounte Murray continuing to do what he does. Still a little bit quiet from Okongwu so far this season. He's another guy who kind of expected to break out a little bit. Still a lot of season to go, though. And they'll have this home game against the Wizards. The Wizards have gotten blown out the past couple times that they've hit the court, so hopefully that'll be one that you can chalk up in the win column for the Hawks to get them over 500. Now, in the Eastern Conference in the NBA, you got the top three teams pretty much figured out. You got the Celtics, the Bucks, and the 76ers. Then the rest is just kind of up for grabs with teams that could be good or could be kind of, middling. The Hawks could figure out a way to get that 4 or 5 seed. That would probably be best case scenario. Kind of not really thinking about them usurping one of the top three teams necessarily. But yeah, 4 or 5 seed for the Hawks could be really good, especially if you get matched up with the Knicks or maybe the Nets, just staying out of the play-in basically. Then there are also some other teams down here that are not doing as well as you would think that they were to start the season. The Miami Heat starting 1-3, the Cleveland Cavaliers starting 1-3. So yeah, basically all those kind of 4 through 10 spots in the Eastern Conference are up for grabs. So it's really up to the Hawks whether they want to play up to where they think that they can go and where they definitely want to go, or whether they'll kind of fall back towards the bottom and end up in the play-in once again. But yeah, definitely 4 or 5 seed, definitely a possibility here. ESPN Power Rankings having the Hawks as the 15th best team in the NBA right now, so definitely right in the middle. Um, they definitely have to show us a little more to show that they're one of the better teams in the NBA there. But the ceiling is there. It's definitely there if everybody can put it together at the same time, especially Trae Young. Like if Trae Young hits his peak sooner rather than later, it would be really good with all the pieces that they have right now playing at the level that they are. They could definitely challenge for that 4 seed at that point. But yeah, still a kind of wait and see thing. As we know, the Hawks can definitely go on some runs where they do pretty poorly. Then they usually follow it up with a good run later in the season. But still, we want to see what they got sooner rather than later. Yeah, still a pretty big believer in this team with how well that they do on offense the past couple seasons. But the defense has really been the problem and what has kept them from getting to the heights that they want to be. And so you definitely want to see the Hawks be a top 20 defense this year and continue being a top 5 or at the worst top 10 offense. I love what Quinn Snyder does. Hawks shooting more threes than they did under McMillan, and hitting them as well. In that Timberwolves game, they shot very well from three. I believe it was 45 or 46%. So, yeah, hopefully they can continue this little mini win streak that they have after starting the season 0-2. We definitely don't want to see another repeat of last season where they did not get above or below 500 the whole season. Yeah, excited for this Hawks season. Should be an exciting team to watch.
Nice shot!
And that's it for today's episode. Thank you for watching, everybody, and we will see you next time.